It was nice that after the game so many people stuck around. It just goes to show, I suppose, what the footy means to the people up here, and I really appreciate it.
Like he's done so many times before, Andrew Johns added a memorable moment to an already long list on Friday night, this time against the Dragons. You couldn't have scripted a better way for him to be honoured for passing 200 games at the club, on his home ground that's often likened by commentators to a temple. The masses remained well after full time to worship the game's greatest player. One of the few nights to enter the 200 club, the milestone was recognised by his predecessor in former Newcastle skipper Tony Butterfield. Tired emotionally and physically after the build-up of a club game in Brisbane, followed by the pressure cooker that is Origin football, it was those cheers that helped him get through the match. Humbled but happy to have given his faithful another one to remember.
It was nice that after the game so many people stuck around. It just goes to show, I suppose, what the footy means to the people up here, and I really appreciate it.
Tomorrow night, a look at the early years in the red and blue and the combination of the Johns brothers.
It seems like there's been more departures than arrivals at Newcastle United this off-season, but things are starting to change. Former Socceroo Milan Blagojevic and goalkeeper John Perosh have agreed to terms for another season, Perosh going from final stand-in to second alongside Tom Willis. Perth defender Craig Deans has agreed to 2 years, while the club says negotiations continue with 1 to 2 more players. Both are believed to be from the Olympic Sharks, one sure to be former Newcastle boy Greg Owens. United's pre-season kicks off in early August with trials against the Northern Spirit, Parramatta and a Northern New South Wales side all in the works, while off-contract player Adam Hughes heads to Wollongong in July after being offered a month in the Wolves' den to try to secure a deal. There's almost as many nights coming back as there are missing this week, but in football, like life, there's few guarantees. While Robbie O'Davis is expected to play, a returning Craig Hall and sore Adam McDougall won't train until Thursday, and Steve Simpson and Matt Jobson are waiting on doctors' orders.
I guess our depth's getting tested as it is, so we'd like to think that they can all take their place.
Friday night will also mark the Newcastle first-grade return of veteran forward Tim Madison, should he overcome knee problems. Fortunately for promising Scone-bred junior Todd Lowry, nothing seems to stand in the way of his likely first-grade debut.
I think we've always thought that Todd would play first grade at some point. He just had a wretched run with injury for the last couple of years. Has now played 4 or 5 games at first division level and has been playing pretty well. So.
As expected, Sean Rudder will return to the 5/8 role, with Kurt Gidley to assume halfback duties. Andrew John's other role as captain, meanwhile, might fall to Simpson, who, if fit, will also be called upon to lead a young forward pack. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
With winds whipping more than 100 kilometres an hour, 3 men desperately clung to their sinking fishing boat. The crew sent out a distress call at 5 a.m. after the 25-metre Silver Bounty started taking on water.
Suddenly they realized that water came into the engine room, and it was rising, and they started to pump, of course. And they pumped, and the water came more and more, so that it didn't help.
The ship was sinking by the second, and as the waves pounded against them, waiting for help was their only option. Their life raft had already been snatched away by the high seas. The Royal Caribbean cruise ship, the Radiance of the Sea, responded to the call for help. Despite the foul seas, the captain sent a small rescue boat straight to the sinking ship.
They see them. They see them. When we got to the scene, they were jumping in the sea when they saw that the rescue was on the way.
So they were swimming towards the boat.
Yeah, and when we pulled them out, we pulled out the youngest guy first, and then I wanted to pull out the captain, but the captain said, take the other crew. So he was very professional and wanted to bring him out last.
Luckily, the men had been wearing protective suits that had kept them warm in waters that were only about 10 degrees Celsius. The 3 were treated for mild hypothermia. Even the passengers aboard the cruise ship felt they'd been part of the rescue.
Absolutely marvellous that the ship happened to be in the right place at the right time, and we all wondered what had happened. The ship came to a sudden stop, but when we realised that 3 lives were saved, we felt good. That was excellent, yes. 3 happy families somewhere.
Trailing by 8 points just after the break, Clayton Maxworthy began a late charge for Wingham, making valuable ground for his side in the lead-up to a Joel Kleindice try. Finding themselves in All Saints territory once again, Wingham also found confidence, taking the odd risk not once, but twice, with the brilliant Ben Webber cutout reaching Tyler Blanche, who went over putting Wingham in front 16-14. In a frustrating second half, All Saints just didn't see any ball, as Joel Kleindice scored a hat-trick to continue the Mid-North Coast side's second half romp. In Tooheys Cup Rugby League, South Newcastle was put on the back foot early by an informed Maitland at Townsend Oval overnight. A touch judge ruling saw South penalised for stripping in the opening minutes, which proved costly with Maitland scoring from the next set of 6. Straight running was the key for the Pumpkin Pickers' next 4-pointer, Dave Anderson crashing over for his side's second. The referee's whistle didn't seem to be blowing South's way, Maitland cashing in on costly turnovers with Mick Williams next to score. 2 quick tries saw the Lions back in the match, but an offside penalty was enough to give Maitland another 2, sending the visitors on their way to a 30-14 victory. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
The 1953 RedX reliability trial sparked Australian interest in pitting man and machine against our wide brown land. After 2 weeks and 10,500 kilometres, Maitland pharmacist Ken Tubman and co-driver John Marshall in a Peugeot took the checkered flag first. Today, to mark the 50th anniversary of the nation's first major motoring endurance event, 80 cars headed out of Sydney on the RedX rerun. The first stage ending in Maitland to pay homage to Tubman.
It's a celebration of the win by the Peugeot, which was driven by Ken Tubman. So we came via Ken Tubman Drive, and we're having a dinner tonight at the Maitland City Bowling Club in honour.
For veteran Newcastle driver Ron Fraser, who's part of the big Peugeot brigade, the rerun holds special significance.
And it was very, very privileged, I thought, to have a run in something that's honouring Kenny Tubman. The name of Ken Tubman. He's such a wonderful participant in this sort of sport, rallying.
While organisers described the RedX rerun as a leisurely touring event, competitive skills will be needed for hill climbs, navigational stages and economy runs. Competitors resume their month-long adventure tomorrow morning. Gary Blair, NBN News.
It was a crime which shocked a community. 2 women beaten to death in a Carrington home. Now, more than 3 years after the brutal slaying of 38-year-old Joanne Tetron and 32-year-old Susan Kay, there's a renewed push to solve the murder mystery, with the state government offering a $100,000 reward for information.
It's hoped that by posting this reward, it will jog the memory of people that may have guilty knowledge or people that just have some information.
There have been other appeals for public help, police pointing to clues like the dead women's cars and video footage showing Susan Kay at a supermarket on the day she died. There was even an emotional appeal from Joanne Tetron's then 13-year-old son, but still the crime remains unsolved.
We don't have the critical information we need.
Police say any piece of information may be useful, no matter how small.
But when we put all that together, we find that it might be the missing link.
The reward offer comes just days before a coronial inquest into the murders is due to get underway. Police hoping to finally be able to put the case to rest. Anyone with information can contact their local police station or Crime Stoppers. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. A rising star of both big screen and small, Sarah Winter is very much in demand. Snapped with students at Newcastle High, the actress who now calls Hollywood home spoke about her rise to become the toast of Tinseltown, reminding pupils this is where it all began.
I was a member of the choir, did ballet here in this room. I wasn't very good, but I liked it.
Students asked questions about her life in the spotlight, but her message to them was down to earth.
Just be kind to everybody. That's a really big one for me. Don't think by stepping on people or being nasty will get you a job, but no one's going to think you're cool.
Her words proving an inspiration to other aspiring young actors.
Yeah, she seemed beautiful person. Yeah, I really liked her. But it shows you that they come from somewhere and that we can be it, if we try hard enough.
And while it may look like a glamorous life, Sarah says it is about hard work.
I don't get a lot of time to sit back and go, wow, this, my life is just so fabulous. I'm working. And if I'm not working, then I'm thinking, I'm not working. So that doesn't feel fabulous either.
She doesn't have to worry about that right now, leaving late today for a whirlwind promotional run in Sydney and Melbourne. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Both sides came off solid opening round wins, but the long trip over for the Westerners looked to be running against them early, with country fullback Tony Gowing going in for the home side. Perth soon found their feet with a pushover try, before Cockatoo halfback Dave Wood wrestled back the advantage for country. Down 15-11 at the break, Perth did all the scoring in the second half, starting with Brett Watson, before another close to time to wrap up the match and firm them as favourites for the title. Meanwhile, New South Wales Country Rugby League was beaten by its Queensland counterpart at Roma, also at the weekend, 36-30. In Group 21 Rugby League, Singleton continued Aberdeen's lean run, while Scone remain undefeated, beating Denman 28-12. The Newcastle North Stars' great National Ice Hockey League season continues with another win over the defending champions, the Sydney Bears, thanks largely to Darryl Batt. Sydney levelled in the second period through Don Burke, before Batt sealed the win with a second after another assist from Jake Ludwig for a 2-1 win. Some big wins in the Premier Hockey League for North, South and Maitland, while the battle for fourth hotted up after the entrants beat the Tigers. Newcastle City scored a huge win in Black Diamond AFL, thrashing Warners Bay. Cardiff and Nelson Bay also got the points. And another great result for redhead triathlete Boyd Conrick overnight, just beaten in a sprint finish by former world champion Chris McCormick in the La Jolla Triathlon in San Diego to finish second. Naming a side he knows could change dramatically by game day, Coach Hagan is content to play a waiting game once again and sit in the Maroons camp, just hoping his Blue Stars don't get hurt.
We'd like to think that we'll get our 6 players back in one piece and they'll back up as well as they did the other week. But certainly if that's the case, it's a pretty strong football team.
The named starting side is one of the strongest of the season, with only the injured Matt Parsons the most notable absence. However, at this time of year, whether or not more join him sideline on Sunday is still to be decided. If it wasn't for injury, Steve Simpson could well be lining up for the Blues tomorrow night. But he isn't even considering a recall in this series.
I've sort of set them aside for the moment and just want to get back and play and hopefully keep injury free.
He'll be one of those aiming up to plug a leaking Knights defence. Almost constant changes haven't helped in recent weeks, but with Newcastle conceding more than 30 points in 6 games this season, 4 of those in the last 5, it's time to turn the stats around.
There's also been a number of soft tries in amongst some of what we've done, so that's probably the most disappointing part of our record in conceding points.
Many users call it a safe drug, but the latest research is challenging marijuana myths. The Hunter Medical Research Institute has been studying the brains of chronic cannabis users, seeing what happens when subjects undertake simple thinking tasks. Using imaging technology, researchers can monitor blood flow in the brain.
This image is showing us that people who use cannabis have difficulties in sending blood to an important brain region.
That affects basic functions like attention, concentration and working memory.
They're essential to our daily life. They're essential to our capacity to get out of bed in the morning and organise ourselves and prepare us for the day.
The study has also found similarities between the responses of cannabis users and schizophrenia patients. Researchers hope to soon be able to unlock more mysteries, a $55,000 Pfizer grant allowing their work to expand. With all the debates surrounding the possible health effects of cannabis and with initiatives like the medical marijuana trials looming, the study could have major implications for the future direction of public policy. It may also influence the increasing numbers of young people taking up the drug.
The amount of information that will come out of this study to inform our adolescents about the potential risks of cannabis use may well be important in terms of our future generations.
Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Russell Clark is a man on a mission to change the public perception that ex-racing greyhounds don't make good pets. The passionate dog lover will set out next month with Storm and Kev to walk from Newcastle to Sydney over 4 days. But the journey isn't for exercise, but to promote the greyhound adoption program in Australia and to hopefully save some of the dogs from ending up on dinner tables overseas. Russell says more than 600 Australian greyhounds were exported to Asia last year, and he believes not all have the opportunity to race. But he feels the problem could be alleviated if more people adopted ex-racing greyhounds.
You know, the government and the greyhound racing authorities throughout Australia have been negligent in their education of the public, and in that regard, a lot of greyhounds in Australia are put down every year, such a large number, because we can't find homes for them because of the misperceptions about them.
The 4-day walk begins on July 15 at 7:30am from Civic Park in Newcastle. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
It may have been sold to a private developer by the federal government. However, the war of words over the former Gangan army camp is intensifying. Dissatisfied with last weekend's answers about the sale process from Fran Bailey, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Defence Minister, the Community Action Group has sought a new ally in their fight, the Newcastle Trades Hall Council.
We're seeking any support that we can in the community, and obviously the Trades Hall Council is a very impactful organisation to have on side.
Trades Hall Secretary Gary Kennedy will put a recommendation to next week's council meeting that trade unions oppose development on the disused defence site.
We'll put a ban on the area and seek discussions with the local council to ensure that the land is not degraded in the meantime, and find out who the developer is and have discussions with them as to exactly what they propose on that very pristine piece of land.
Port Stephens residents aren't the only ones angry about the sale. It's been the subject of discussion this week in both federal and state parliaments, with Paterson MP Bob Baldwin branding the Gangan sale possibly the quickest government sale in history. Gary Blair, NBN News. The weather and the presence of the Navy mine hunter Hewan summed up ADI Shipbuilding's fortunes today. The future cloudy after the federal government left the company's plans to build new patrol boats high and dry. Insufficient value for money blamed for sending the work to Western Australia. Newcastle Lord Mayor John Tate is disappointed the hunter has missed out.
We've got an excellent facility here with ADI. The staff are very competent. The facility is proven in the work that it can turn out, and we've missed out. I'm disappointed.
Minister for the Hunter, Michael Costa, has called on Canberra to rethink the decision.
So it is a devastating decision for the hunter, a major blow. I call on the federal government to look at its commitment to the hunter.
ADI's high-tech advanced composite hull appears to have been overlooked in favour of conventional ship construction. The Hunter Business Chamber now hopes the region can retain the technology and look to the future.
And I have no doubt that the expertise developed will stand in good stead for future tenders that may come up in the future.
ADI will now assess the future for its Newcastle shipyard. With the all-important patrol boat contract gone, the company says it will work to develop strategic partnerships with Defence for the future construction of Royal Australian Navy destroyers, tankers and amphibious craft. Gary Blair, NBN News. The bodies of Joanne Tetteran and Suzanne Kay were discovered in Miss Tetteran's Carrington home on May 17, 2000. They'd been bludgeoned to death 6 days earlier. Today, police presented the coroner with the results of their 3-year inquiry. Details Senior Investigator Detective Sergeant Kel Platt described as a credit to police and the community.
We'd like to thank the public of Newcastle and in particularly the residents of the suburb of Carrington. They've been most helpful and supportive to us for the last 3 years in this investigation.
Coroner Alan Railton was told police now know the type of object used to kill the women but wouldn't elaborate further. They also revealed Nathan Leslie McKellar of Cameron Park, who knew Joanne Tetteran because of a drug habit, remains a person of interest, but there was insufficient evidence to proceed with criminal charges. After a 30-minute hearing, Coroner Railton concluded the women had been killed by a person or persons unknown. As a result of today's inquest, Coroner Alan Railton has referred the police evidence to the Director of Public Prosecutions. The DPP will be asked to assess whether criminal charges should be laid as a result of the information gathered during the lengthy investigation. Police will continue their work with this week's offer of a $100,000 reward for information on the murders.
I'd like to assure the public that any additional information will be investigated to finality.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Over the years, these two sides have built a healthy rivalry, regularly meeting each other in tournament finals. Holding a small lead heading into the final quarter, Newcastle then turned it on, Joshua Cohen finishing this. Westfields was kept scoreless for most of the final term as Newcastle continued to rack up the points. Adam Stanger's 24 points and several assists helped him to the MVP award. While few could go past Eli Sulai, he top scored and was strong off the boards as well in the 92-55 win. Newcastle High's first since 1980. As a teenager, Greg Owens made a name for himself as a super sub for Newcastle's then flagship NSL side, the Breakers. A few groin operations and 2 grand finals for Sydney Olympic later, he's back and he couldn't be happier.
I was just very happy, it's been a long time since I played back up here in front of the fans that I left about 4 or 5 years ago, so it'd be good to return home.
Disappointed to see his former Sydney club in such turmoil, Owens knows he had to return to a strong club to continue his bid to reach Ollie Roo's selection for Athens 2004.
That's what I'm trying to look forward to, and with the Olympic now pretty much gone, I need to play in a good side and train with a good side.
Beyond that, the 22-year-old still harbours dreams of an overseas contract, but for now, he's keen to just settle back in at home.
I know most of the guys, I was in Australian camps with a lot of them, and I played against most of them, so you get to know them through the system.
The club is close to re-signing luckless Australian under-20s player Michael Prentice as well, after a season written off to injury, but it's understood he'll be the last, with Alex Moriera and Scott Bailey at long odds to remain at United.
An accident involving mining equipment 3 kilometres below the surface of the West Wallsend colliery sparked the extraordinary incident. The mine worker had seriously injured his right arm and decided to sever part of the badly injured limb before emergency crews arrived. Medical help in the form of ambulance paramedics John Gleeson and John Pascoe then reached the man as colleagues rushed him to the surface.
We weren't at the scene, so we can't confirm or deny anything that this person did to get out of that situation, but it's certainly he was a brave man and he did a pretty good job of looking after himself.
The 43-year-old from nearby West Wallsend was airlifted by rescue helicopter to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital, where he remains in a serious but stable condition. Ambulance officers today praised the actions of the man's workmates.
His colleagues did an excellent job at treating that patient and also getting him back to us, and also the first aid that they applied and the reassurance that they gave him. The communications with the ambulance service was excellent.
Despite the seriousness of the accident, paramedics Gleeson and Pascoe say they were unfazed by the situation that confronted them.
I think John and I just did our usual job together and had a pretty good result.
The West Wallsend underground accident is the latest of 2 serious incidents at Hunter Valley Coal Mines this weekend. The Mineral Resources Department and the Mining Union are also investigating an accident at the Mount Thorley open cut, which has left a second mine worker in Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital. Darren Murrell of Clarencetown was driving a bulldozer similar to the machine seen here when it was struck by boulders that fell from an earth wall at the mine. He's undergone surgery in hospital for leg fractures. Gary Blair, NBN News. It's the next major reform for coal train operations in the Hunter Valley. The train guard was the first casualty of change when crews were reduced from 3 men to 2. Even though the trains have got longer in length and carry much bigger loads, new owner Pacific National is ready to take the next step and have just the driver operate these export moving giants. The company has worked out a 3-stage trial to assess the change. However, the state's rail safety regulator has now placed the plan on hold. The company has been told that it would be inappropriate to proceed with the trial until the Special Commission of Inquiry into the waterfall crash is completed by Justice Peter McInerney later this year. Rail safety regulator Ken Donaldson expects there could be recommendations to come from the inquiry that would affect the trial, and he says it's not prudent to preempt the Commission's deliberations. A spokesman for Pacific National says the company was only advised of the decision late last week and is still considering its response. While the trial has been delayed, the rail safety regulator has offered to continue to work with Pacific National to prepare for the eventual start. Gary Blair, NBN News.
To a thief, this is a tempting sight and an all-too-easy grab.
People should know better, but they keep on leaving valuables and it makes it attractive to thieves. CDs, mobile phones, cash, plenty of cash has been left in a lot of cars.
It's a practice which has cost many of the car owners dearly. Over the weekend, police recorded a spate of car break-ins around Newcastle, 31 vehicles in all, with the Adamstown, Broadmeadow and Hamilton areas hotspots for the crime, recording 22 break-ins. Valuables were taken from each, but thieves have also begun targeting more unusual items.
It's besides the usual mobile phones and cash, they've even taken number plates, so they can be used for committing other crimes.
Most of the crimes have been committed at night on vehicles left parked on the street or in open carports. If you have to leave your car unprotected, police say the best way to deter thieves is to keep valuables out of sight. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
It's been a whirlwind week already for Anthony McCrohan, who's at the centre of a 7-day appeal for funds. Left with a degenerative spine after injury sustained in a Knights junior trial in 1996, the now 21-year-old is unable to work and will one day require the full-time use of a wheelchair. The biggest pain now, he wasn't covered by insurance.
I'd hate to think this could ever happen to someone again. I think in September when everybody trials for the Knights and stuff like that again, there's a possibility, a big possibility it could happen to more kids again. I think it's really something, a serious issue that's got to be fixed up.
Hoping to raise enough money for a purpose-built home, the coffers have swelled towards the $100,000 mark, with Tamworth the next stop tomorrow.
The week's just been enormous. I just can't thank everybody that's sort of donated and just been to all these functions and set them up enough. I'll be eternally grateful to everyone. It's been a huge week.
The fundraiser will conclude on Thursday night's edition of The Footy Show on NBN.
In the world of designer drugs, ice is the current party favourite. A very pure, crystallised form of methamphetamine, it's much stronger than speed and produces a powerful high in users.
They feel good, they get lots of energy, they can run around and do things. But as the dose goes up, or as the purity of a product goes up, the risk of some of the toxicities becomes more apparent.
Ice speeds up a user's pulse rate and increases blood pressure. It can also lead to psychosis, and over a longer term it can damage major organs, especially the heart and brain. Ice is relatively new to Australia, but drug experts say it's enjoying an alarmingly rapid rise in popularity. Its dangers have been highlighted this week with the death of a young Newcastle man suspected of overdosing on the drug. 21-year-old Clinton Morgan died in John Hunter Hospital on Monday. Police are investigating the circumstances around his death.
Deaths from these designer drugs are few and far between, but of course any death in a young person is an absolute tragedy.
Health experts have warned drug users to beware of experimenting with ice, fearing its increased availability will lead to other tragedies. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. An early mark for students as teachers took the last hour of the school day to stop work. Around the Hunter's 60 Catholic schools, teachers met to discuss an offer of a 6% pay rise over 2 years. The union wants 25%.
It's not an ambit claim. We believe, as I said, that the roles, the levels of accountability and the responsibilities of teachers have changed dramatically. And again, it has to be reflected through better pay and better working conditions.
The pay issue will be decided by the Industrial Relations Commission at the end of the year in conjunction with the State Award. But today's meetings weren't all about pay. Teachers also want better conditions and action on issues like class sizes, workloads and child protection requirements.
Teachers are fed up. They feel that they can't discipline, they can't comfort, they can't do anything without running risk of an allegation.
The Catholic Schools Education Office says it's working with teachers on a range of issues and that their cooperation meant little disruption during today's action. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
The failure of Nardell Coal Corporation earlier this year was a $10 million blow to the Hunter firms which had done work at the Ravensworth mine but weren't paid before the company was placed in receivership. Now the battle to get those outstanding payments for the unsecured creditors is proving expensive for Nardell's parent company. Macquarie Bank is already $2 million out of pocket because Mineral Resources Minister Kerry Hickey refuses to allow mining to cease until the small Hunter companies are paid their money.
Well, it's terrific. It helps us immensely. You know, it's more than we could have hoped the Minister to do. He's been a great help.
The mounting cost to get the all-important state government approval for Nardell's closure is expected to see another offer made to the unsecured creditors. An initial 17-cent payment, which was voted down by Hunter firms, is now expected to be increased to 25 cents in the dollar. However, Maitland businessman Mark Britton says the bank still fails to understand their plight. The unsecured creditors maintain the only offer they will accept is payment in full. Gary Blair, NBN News.
They say you can take the boys out of the country, but looking at this head sail, not the country out of the boys, as the Wolverines arrived in Newcastle Harbour today. The crew of 7, including four-legged mascot Shoney, left Sydney yesterday bound for Airlie Beach, a 5-week fundraising adventure with concerts at 14 ports along the way.
They're surprisingly well. Yeah, I was expecting all sorts of problems, but no, very good, you know.
On board is 24-year-old Lisa Martin, diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when she was 3. Lisa recently lost her younger brother to the genetic disorder, which affects the lungs and digestive system of 1 in 2,500 Australian babies.
I have to get out there and I have to live every day as it comes to the fullest that I can that day. I don't let it change anything.
More accustomed to being on stage or a Harley, it's going to be an interesting journey for the crew.
They call it fat, I call it upper strength. And they got me pulling the lines and pulling the halyards up and pulling the mainsails, the foresail and this sort of thing. So it's mainly the muscle sort of things for me.
Up and down the mast, a lot of grinding, a lot of pulling the ropes. I'm the skinnier one, so I get to do the skinnier one jobs.
Every dollar that they put out is going to be going towards the cause. So.
The Wolverines will be on their land legs tomorrow night, performing their first concert of the tour at Newcastle's Club Nova Panthers, with a hit song that helps spread the message about cystic fibrosis.
January's Pura Cup and
Netball attracts thousands of competitors to Newcastle's National Park each week, but while teams were scoring points at the Junior State Age Championships on Saturday, just over the road, hundreds of parking tickets were being issued to netballers and their families.
Fancy doing that on a day like today. You're fully aware that the Netball Association's here today. Excuse me? Yous are kidding, aren't you?
Hang on, my 10th birthday.
You've got visitors to your city, thousands of people coming to visit, and you're just not helpful.
There's no doubt the parking blitz will send many visitors to the city home with bitter memories. But Newcastle Council says while such tournaments are important to the local economy, motorists are still required to obey the law and listen for the warnings.
The Netball Association, they appreciate the issues that we're faced with, and particularly when our officers are there, there's announcements put over that our officers are in the area and are patrolling, and people are advised to move their vehicles.
Stephen Mount, NBN News.
January's Pura Cup encounter between New South Wales and Western Australia in Newcastle was the season turning point for the Blues. A last over victory propelled them on to win the 4-day competition and the ING one-day series. Crowd support at number one sports ground seen as a reason Cricket New South Wales is keen to return.
There's an excess of 16,000 people, and that, just for information, that bettered Adelaide's crowd for the whole season in Pura Cup matches. So, and it was New South Wales' largest crowd by far.
If the January 9 venue change for the match against Victoria is approved tomorrow, Newcastle can expect to see a class Blues lineup.
You look at the two War brothers, Simon Kadich, who had such an outstanding season last year, Michael Slater, who's returned to form, and we've got local player Mark Cameron played here last year, and it'd be good to see he has a good season to see him here again. And plus, it's interesting to note that Matthew Nicholson's returning to New South Wales from Western Australia. He actually played for Western Australia here last year in the game. And
Dennis Broad admits he now has only one other wish to realise.
Yeah, that'd be the goal now, to see Shane Warne receive his 1 month's reduction in his suspension. He's actually due to come back to cricket in February next year, and it'd be nice to see him receive a reduction of 1 month so he could return here in Newcastle, but that might be wishful thinking.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
The old car bodies were burning fiercely when firefighters arrived at the yard on Strait Road about 9:30 last night. As well as the guard dogs slowing them down, there was no access to water, so another pumper was brought in to relay water from a hydrant down the road. It was slow going, firing water at the intense heat from the burning cars, so drums of foam were brought in to do the job. After 2 hours, the fire was out. The cause is yet to be established. Meantime, a cottage at New Lambton was saved from total destruction by two Good Samaritans last night when they noticed that a fire had broken out. A passing Westpac rescue helicopter crewman teamed up with a neighbour, kicked in the door of the cottage and searched for people before training garden hoses on the dwelling until brigades arrived. Both men had to be treated with oxygen after breathing in smoke. The fire destroyed the kitchen of the New Lambton Road cottage. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The attempt was made to stop this coal train as it approached the Pacific National Kooragang Island coal unloader. EDI rail workers, who are members of the Manufacturing Workers Union, wanted to tell the drivers that their dispute for a new enterprise bargaining agreement has cut the regular inspection program for the trains.
That with those cuts, eventually down the track, the locomotives aren't going to be performing to their full complement, and that could cause a serious accident.
The workers have been offered a 12% pay increase over 3 years. However, they want an immediate minimum 6% pay rise and better protection of their entitlements.
Due to the fact that we're now hearing that some $160 million has been lost on the Millennium Train project, that our people are now looking at where's the company going. We wanted entitlements.
The protest ended with a march off the site and a vow to step up the campaign.
From next week there will be a week's stoppage that will then stop most of the coal trains in the Hunter Valley.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Holidaying beach walkers at Fingal Bay had more to look at than normal this morning. The 44-foot ketch, the Lady Stevens, ran aground at about 6 last night. Sailing north from Lake Macquarie, experienced skipper Dave Redman rounded the Fingal Lighthouse, but then misjudged the entrance to Port Stephens, running aground on the northern side of the Spit. An attempt to tow him off by the Coastal Patrol failed, and all he could think about today was refloating his ferro cement boat that doubles as his home.
Well, we're hoping to get the police to tow us off. If not, we can do all the help we can get. Anyone that could volunteer to tow it off, well, I'm willing to pay.
Not one to waste a minute, Dave used the opportunity to scrape some barnacles off the hull and to check for damage. There are a few sights sadder to the yachty than to see his boat high and dry, but Dave says his accident may have been avoided had there been more navigation lights pointing out the entrance to Port Stephens.
This would be very nice, wouldn't it? If there was street lights there or something, you would know exactly where. Yeah, it would be a great idea. Even those rechargeable lights.
Police and the Coastal Patrol will attempt to tow the Lady Stevens off the beach on tonight's high tide. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Welcome to the future home of the Hunter Pirates. This vacant block of land on the Glendale Supercentre site will one day house a 4,500-seat multi-purpose sports stadium.
All things going to plan, we should turn the soil this year.
While those plans are well advanced, the biggest key is who'll fund the estimated $6 million required for the project, and it's private in every sense of the word.
Can't say too much other than always guaranteed, mate, we wouldn't be here if we weren't 100% sure that we could pull this off.
Not required to dip into public funds, local and state governments will provide key assistance to the project. Such a facility that will also cater for community and other sporting groups has long been earmarked for the Lake Macquarie area, but is well placed for the wider public given the infrastructure already in place.
You know, Cessnock, Maitland, Newcastle, everyone's close to Glendale.
The Pirates will play home games out of the Newcastle Entertainment Centre for the first season, but for long-term viability as a club, the Pirates need their own stadium.
The numbers just show you that you need to run your own stadium. There are key components that you need to be able to make money on: food, alcohol, ticketing, parking. You can't do that if you don't control your own stadium.
Meanwhile, the original home for national basketball in Newcastle, the Broadmeadow Basketball Stadium, will host the week-long National Under-18 Championships starting tomorrow. Jim Callanan, NBN News.